Shalom, giving all honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Arachak, Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations unto the awful elect tabernacle of David that are scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. And it's a beautiful thing to see prophecy popping off. Yeah, you're going to have the distractions, the opposition, that's all prophesied as well. But we definitely got to keep our eyes focused, on what's going on, what's being done, systematically, geopolitically, on the world stage, if you will. All right. Scriptures say to watch as well as pray. We're seeing these different reports on how a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing, his administration, is all undermining the partnership that Babylon has with the beast. All right, which we know the beast is, the European Union, which formalized into NATO. All right. So right now, what we're witnessing is that shift in relations between the great whore and the beast. We know, according to Revelation, the 17th chapter, John the Revelator, he saw in a vision, he saw that woman, all right, and he had her in admiration, right? She was, this woman, and she was riding upon this scarlet colored beast having 7 heads and 10 horns. All right. So she would have command, for a certain period of time. But then eventually you get down to the end of that chapter. It said that eventually that the beast would begin to hate the whore. And now, we're seeing in prophecy how, with Donald Trump in office and the things that he's doing, all right, it's starting to shift them apart. All right, they're no longer seeing eye to eye on certain things, and it's interesting to see, nevertheless, because like the scriptures tell us, there be, matter of fact, let me get it, because this all ties into the downfall of E. We know that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob's the beginning of it that follows, and the Edomites will be prophesied to be the last ruling nation before the return of our Lord. So this is why we're starting to see this dynamic. So this is I believe it's the book of Sirach 25 and verse 7. It says, "There be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy. In the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that have joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy." And especially for us, because the enemy has dominated, for quite some time, at least in our time. The scriptures talk about, how long will they blaspheme? How long will they be proud? How long is the wicked going to prosper? And we'll at times have that sentiment, but we understand that the Most High is operating on his own accord. Everything is based according to his purpose, his will. So we had to let things be done, all right, as it is in heaven, right? So, if you've been watching closely, the Lord is doing just that, man. He's fulfilling exactly what he said. Like I said in Habakkuk, we always quote it. His vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will come, it will surely come, it will not tarry. So, the pieces are beginning to move on the world stage, all right? And now these European countries, they're realizing that the U.S. under Trump no longer have, a common interest. And now they want to, be sovereign and no longer dependent, all right, with the West, all right. This whole skirmish with Ukraine. You know, it's affected them tremendously, and they know that is primarily the U.S. that got them in this situation. You know, and now, you know, Trump has been you know, he was pump faking, you know, a few months back, you know, acting like he's going to do something about Russia attacking Ukraine. But now all of a sudden, you know, he's taking a different approach. Why don't y'all just go ahead and concede Kiev and whatever territories to Russia? So, you know, a lot of his moves is indifferent to, you know, what can you know, favor these European countries, right? So let me go here, and when it's all said and done, you know, Babylon is going to have no ally. All right, they didn't allow them small hats to basically play themselves into a corner where by the time they look up, nobody's going to be with them. You done managed to turn everybody into an enemy, showing your loyalty to Amalek, and you're starting to look like Scar to these other nations, man. Remember, you know, I'm just using the analogy, but you know, in the Lion King, you know, we know that Scar, he envied his brother's position as king. You know, he wanted to rule, so he ended up, you know, killing it, you know, murdering his own brother, Mufasa. That same Cain spirit, that same Edomite spirit, right? That same serpent in the garden spirit. You know, he wanted it to you know, make his way into position so that he can be the top guy. So now Esau is the top guy, and now under his rule, all right, under his dominion, everything is suffering. There's no happiness within this world. Like it says in Proverbs 29, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. And when Scar got in position, the pride was suffering. You know, there was famine. There was no, you know, food left. You know, you just look. They pan around and you see the whole kingdom, and everything's just deteriorated. Nothing growing. You know, everything looked bad. Everybody's mournful, sad faces. And they was looking at Scar like, "Hey, man, we ain't got nothing." Was you know, but everything was flourishing when Mufasa was king. So that's how these nations is looking at E. Like the resources is starting to become depleted. There's more war. There's more disease. You're seeing all these uproars all over the world. So everybody's looking to this man to see, hey, man, you're the problem. So when it's all said and done, the hammer of the earth, all right, everybody's going to be looking against her, including her former allies, man. So let's you know, get into some of this. And this is from The Guardian. It says Trump has confirmed Europeans' worst fears. Are their leaders ready to stand up to him now? Hey, this is hey, prophecy, man. This is big. And these other guys are still trying to figure out if the Hebrew that we speak is it the real Hebrew. This is what they're debating. They're debating Gentile salvation, while prophecy is unraveling. So that's how you know that these guys are not the true prophets of the Lord, man. All right? These guys are a bunch of sellouts. They're a bunch of hirelings, and they're showing themselves. But we're going to continue to you know, stick with prophecy. All right? We defend the gospel. We say what needs to be said. You know, after 2 or 3 admonitions, that's it. And we move right back to prophecy. So anyway, continuing on, it says, almost half of EU citizens regard Donald Trump as an enemy of Europe, which is supposed to be an ally, right? A new survey across 9 countries revealed last week. The poll conducted for the French debate platform Le Grand Continent found that across Europe, Trumpism is considered a hostile force. And they even figured that out even during the first administration. When they used to get on them at those G20 summits about how they're not giving their input into the GDP, and they used to basically ridicule them, you know, just grilling NATO. And that's was that in Daniel. It talks about the horn who's the little horn who's stout. You know, his look was more stout than his fellows. And you look at Trump and how he was, you know, treating those other European leaders. This man is super proud, man. He was basically constantly sunning them, talking down to him. So right now, him being in position, all right, he has to do the bidding of his Zionist overlords. And they're saying, the hell with them. All right, you need to focus on us, you know, set up this Greater Israel project. And then you can also focus on over there in the Western Hemisphere. Go take that oil from Venezuela. But be careful, because China, you know, on the other side of the Pacific, you know, they're trying to you know, they got some common interests with Venezuela. All right, Russia kind of got their eyes over there too. So they can't even be worried about Ukraine anymore, because now they got a whole new mission here on this side of the hemisphere. See? So it's playing right, because the Most High is just setting this devil a trap. Let me get that in Jeremiah. The Lord is basically setting up a snare for Babylon. And they're playing right into it. I believe it's either Jeremiah 50 or 51. Let me see if I can find it. Yep. Here's Jeremiah 50 and 23. It says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? And this is dealing with the aftermath, after the Lord deals with this place. Because we know it's going to go out in a thermonuclear holocaust. With nothing left standing, man. It's going to be, you know, an everlasting ashtray. All right? For thousands and thousands of miles of, you know, ash and smoke. It says, I have laid a snare for thee. All right, and basically a trap. The Lord set a trap for Babylon. It says, and thou art also taken. All right, basically you got caught in that snare. It says, oh Babylon, and thou was not aware. You had no idea. You didn't know that the Lord, you know, pretty much set out a trap for you. Because you was very proud and lofty. You thought you could never fall, like it tells you in Isaiah 47, Revelation 18. You know, I stand as a widow. I shall not suffer the loss of children. I shall not know widowhood. You know, I am and none else. So the Lord laid that snare for you, where you think that you're going to be safe and secure, and that all your allies, they're going to continue to just, you know, be your lapdogs and your underlings, and continue to take your unilateralism, you know, and just continue to follow suit. Nah, man. Because when you read the prophecy in Revelation 17 about how the beast shall hate the whore, that's the Lord that's going to basically put that in their spirit to do. And you're starting to see it right now with how the Lord is using Trump to undermine the beast. Let me get Proverbs 21. And it says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. All right, so when you go to Revelation 17, it talks about how these 10 kings, they would have, let me go to it. It is Revelation 17 and verse 12. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are the 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. And then you can go back into the Roman history where you had the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, the Vanderbilts, the Anglo-Saxons, and you can go into that history, the 10 kingdoms, all right, of Europe, and that constituted the Roman Empire. But then we know that the old Roman Empire, the first beast, it fell a long time ago. All right, and then it was prophesied to come out of the bottomless pit, and that they would basically rule again. And so this is what the Lord put in the vision for John to see. That same system would come back in the form of NATO, the EU, which America, came out of NATO. All right, and we understand that America got its independence from fighting a war, and they declared their independence after the war. With you had the French, the British, and the Spanish, but it was from the British. All right, and thus formed the United States. All right. So it says, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. It's talking about the war. When Yahushua returns, you're going to have the war in heaven with Michael and his angels versus the dragon and his angels. It says, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, the melting pot. All right, it's multicultural, ethnicities here. All right. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And what we're beginning to see is what we're witnessing is the beginning of this. All right, them turning on the whore, because they feel like, yo, this motherfucker that's representing them, it doesn't seem like we don't feel like we still have the same partnership. It seems like everything has changed. So we probably need to, get away from this whore and operate independently, So they're getting that sentiment right now. They feel like we were friends, but now we're turning into enemies. We're turning into foes. So back in this article, it says, the new U.S. foreign policy doctrine published by the White House on Friday will have heightened these respondents' worst fears. The 30-day national security strategy landed like a bombshell in Europe, and citizens may have been out in front of their political leaders in figuring out what Trump's worldview could mean for Europeans. The strategy outlines a radical shift away from the ethos underpinning the Atlantic Alliance, the doctrine that has bound the U.S. to Europe since the Second World War. All right, and what they all had in what they were all in unison for was for the common interest of setting Amalek into the Holy Land. All right. They of course, the Israelites, we were prevailed over. They formed their military / economic confederacy, if you will, and so that they can have dominance over the old world and the new world, the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere. All right. So now that's starting to deteriorate, now that they're no longer seeing eye to eye with each other. Basically they have different interests now, right? Trump want to do him. Well, really, he doesn't want to do him. He want to do what the elites is informing him to do. He wants to set up the Zionists, the technocrats to put more finishing touches on the image of the beast. You know, this digital technocracy, which all these nations are in on that, but you know, they're definitely using Trump to implement that for the Western Hemisphere. All right, but can two walk together lest they be agreed? So you're seeing the division right now. All right, and hey, and I'm gonna show, you know, after I read a little bit of this article, I'm gonna play some of the video from Scott Ritter, where he's also going into it as well. All right, because this is a major shift right now. Okay, this is all we're witnessing the beginning of the fall of E. All right. Anyway, it says that the U.S. now frames the EU, the continent's core political community, as a legitimate target for ideological warfare. Its most astonishing pivot is a threat to meddle directly to cultivate resistance in Europe and restore the supposedly lost national sovereignties of the EU's ailing individual nations. And in just doing this also, it'll leave Europe vulnerable to the hostile approach that Russia has taken, where they're slowly but surely are, you know, moving in, you know, with force, and they're sieging, you know, more European territory. All right, with their help of NATO through the U.S., they were able to, you know, kind of halt Russia, even though they were taking a little damage. You know, they was taking some damage, they were taking hits, but with Trump backing off, is leaving them in Russia's hands, which hey, the Lord said he would put the hooks into the jaws of Gog. All right, so this is what you're seeing happening as well, aligning with what it says in Ezekiel the 38th chapter. But continuing on, it says, this is not just the familiar threat to withdraw troops or demand that Europe shells out more money for its own defense. It suggests that the Trump administration wants to help patriotic far-right parties to power while legitimizing racist conspiracy theories. It makes the extraordinary claim that Europe faces the risk of civilizational erasure if non-European immigration is allowed to continue. You know, and they're pushing that sentiment here in the West. You know, blaming it on the northern tribes, and then now they're shifting over to the Somalians. You know, and it's all political, for political reasons. All right. I'll read just a little more and then we'll move over. It says, for the Dutch political scientist Cas Mudde, an expert in the far right, this strategy means Europe must count the U.S. from now on as a willing adversary. Writing in The Guardian, Mudde said, perhaps now that it is published in an official document, European leaders will finally understand that Daddy is serious. The current U.S. government believes that its national security is best served by the destruction of liberal democracy in Europe. Trump doubled down on Tuesday using an interview with Politico to again lay into decaying European nations and their politically correct leaders. Those immigration policies were destroying their countries. He complained about Paris and London in particular. The problem, as he viewed it, was the French and British capitals were becoming less white, or wrote The Guardian's Peter Beaumont that they are not racist enough. So you're seeing this growing sentiment of, you know, Edomite nationalism, because they feel like they're losing in their own kingdoms to these darker nations. You know, immigration. This is what Trump and Elon Musk and them is alluding to over here. So they feeling threatened, man. So Esau, he's crashing out. You know, this is Revelation 12:12, that, you know, for the devil shall come down having great wrath, knowing that he have but a short time. All right, because hey, you're in your end, and you can even feel it. All right, you're clearly at your end. it's a beautiful ending to this this global film directed by the Most High. The curtains is getting ready to close, man. All right, but anyway, let me go here. Let me play some of this video so you can hear, some of the narrative.
Especially the Europeans. However, you more or less predicted that the US was going to go this direction about 8 months ago. How do you make sense of this new security strategy?
Well, I mean, this is exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science to go back and listen to Donald Trump. Listen to him during the campaign, listen to him as he spoke about what his priorities were. You're right, back in April, I spoke to this issue, and I said that the number one priority of the United States will be Fortress America, to secure the Western Hemisphere for America. I said the next most important front would be China, to shift resources that weren't going to be allocated to security of the Western Hemisphere to the Pacific, to stand up to China there.
Basically, the U.S. got to save money. They can't keep dishing out money to help them over there when they got their own mission over here in the Western Hemisphere. All right? It's going to take some money to have to go to war with Venezuela. It's going to take money to have to, use strategy to deal with China, So it's not a good look, especially from the European side. All right, because that means if the U.S. loses focus on what's happening with them in Russia, then hey, Russia, they're too strong. So there it is, man. So let's continue.
That the United States would de-emphasize its military engagement in both Europe and the Middle East. This wasn't me, making things up out of thin air. This was simply assessing the statements made by the Trump administration. And, we are now, 10 months into the Trump presidency. There are certain patterns that are appearing because, look, you're analytically inclined. I know you are. I follow you. I listen to you. And if you're analytically inclined, the Trump administration has to be one of the most singularly frustrating entities to follow and evaluate, because if you do short-term plotting, they're all over the map. I mean, one day they say this, the next day they say something else, they say it again, and it's very frustrating. But when you examine...
Yeah, they keep double talking. Trump keep flip-flopping on his views and on what he's trying to do. And they be trying to keep it quiet as kept, but it's even division in the Congress. It's a lot of different arguments within the Congress over these matters that they're bringing out. So hey, what did Yahushua say? A nation, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand, and that's what's happening. There's a lot of division going on behind all this. So hey, all we can do is just sit back and watch it unfold.
These data points over time, you find that they inexorably point in the direction that Trump says he wants to go. It's just that he's not going from A to Z directly. He is going all over the map, and it's difficult. But if you assess Trump over the long term, everything he said he wanted to accomplish, the directions he wanted to go, that's the direction he's heading. And the National Security Strategy document is reflective of this reality. Also keep in mind that, he tasked his national security team with the production of this document back in April. So, the guidance that was given for the production of this document remained consistent, and therefore there's no surprises that this document says what it does.
Well, I'm thinking if you switch from you recognize that the world has switched from unipolarity to multipolarity, and you have to prioritize places. It does make a lot of sense. That is, first priority is well, shore up your own hemisphere. That is the Western Hemisphere. Then, of course, confront the main adversary, which is in Asia, China primarily. And if you pivot to those places, you pivot away. So that's Europe, which is getting the, well, I guess, short end of the stick. So a lot of this makes sense, but there's a lot of focus on ideology as well, though. How do you make sense of this? Or they call for reducing the role of ideology, to be more specific?
You know, when you take a look at, again, evaluating the Trump administration over time, go back to the last national security strategy document that was promulgated by the Biden administration. In it, they build a world vision that is predicated on the defense of the rules-based international order. That was the sacred mantra of everything American. And from that came the defense of democracy, American democracy imposed on other nations as the gold standard. Donald Trump gave a number of very telling speeches during his campaign in which he rejected the rules-based international order, and he rejected the notion that America has a right to dictate things, the outcomes to other nations based upon, American principles, values, etc. He said the place for American values is at home. That's where we need to defend them, at home. And if we shouldn't be projecting them out of our shores if we haven't fully defended them at home. That's a little bit hypocritical. Remember one of the answers about to a question he gave, Putin is a killer. He said, well, we've killed a lot of people too. Very pragmatic, realistic answer. I would say that it shouldn't take anybody by surprise that Trump, when evaluating the world we live in, is more interested in the practicalities, economic relations, who we invest our money in, why are we investing money to places, and there's a difference.
And we know what it is. They're going, scoping around, what nations got the resources needed in order for them to, finish building their digital Tower of Babel. All right, this global technocracy, AI. This is what the focus is right now. They don't want to focus on Europe's problems and whatever situation that they're having. So the EU is like, oh yeah, so we just out of the picture. We just got to speak for ourselves. Well, shit, we always felt that way anyway. So that's what's happening. So when it's all said and done, what was once on Babylon's side, when Babylon look up at the end of all this conflict, they're gonna be on their own. All right. Now let me get this scripture. Try to cut this short. I'm not gonna make this too long. This is Obadiah in verse 7, and I'm gonna read it in the NLT. It's dealing with Edom. This is their judgment. Obadiah verse 7, and it says, all your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. Because that's what's ultimately going to happen. The Lord put the spirit on them to burn her with fire. That's ultimately what's going to happen. So Trump is it's something that's going to happen, man. And we believe that this can very well happen under Trump. Something's going to happen, and then when it's all said and done, this war kicks off. On a global scale, the EU, they're gonna pull a bone from a Training Day. At the end when Denzel, he when he got into that situation, and the dudes in the jungles, them Bloods, they found out who he was, and homie came out with the burner, And he told the white boy, hey, go ahead, white boy. And he pointed the gun right at Denzel. You know? So that's how these European countries, that's how they're going to turn on America, man. All right, it says, your trusted friends will set traps for you and you won't even know about it. Yeah, man. So we in that time. And he's trying to figure it out. You know, he like Scott Ritter was saying, he's trying to be very practical on how he deals with these different situations. But ultimately, like it says in Jeremiah 49, Obadiah, hey, there's no more wise men left to give you, sound wise counsel on what you should do. So you're gonna end up with your back against the wall, following these insatiable, greedy, covetous, greedy devils that control and run this whole thing, and you're gonna end up getting destroyed. All right, Jeremiah 49 and 50. All right, the least of the flock shall draw them out and make them desolate with them. So we seeing how this is all panning out. So the EU, they're beginning to feel that burn, man. It's going to be some tension. Okay. So I'll probably stop it there. I know I could have went to Daniel about the the divide, of the 10 toes, but y'all brothers can go and read those scriptures. But it all ties into what we see happening. Okay, it's all happening, man. But Lord willing, y'all were edified. I'm gonna end on that note. Let me give all honor, all praise, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And to the next lesson, Shalom.